Kidnap.
Chapter 1. I slowly open my eyes, wondering where I am. The air feels thick and heavy. My eyes adjust to the orange glow surrounding me. I try to stay calm, telling myself not to panic. This is just a dream. It can't be real. It can't. But it is. I don't know where I am or how I got here. I just remember going to sleep in my bed and waking up in this thing. I try to lift my arms or move my legs. They feel heavy, like I'm trying to lift several weights. Slowly, I move my arm in front of my face. The orange fog shifts as I wiggle my fingers. It's so thick, I can only see a few inches in front of me. I push my arm forward with my palm out, and I hit a wall. No, what is this? I feel around with both my hands, above me and below as far as I can reach. Swallowing hard, I realize I'm in some kind of box. This isn't a dream, it's a nightmare. I want to wake up. Please, let me wake up. Terror rises inside me. I want to scream, to yell for help, but no sound comes. The orange fog fills my mouth. It's hard to breathe. My chest feels heavy. I have to get out. I push against the wall again and again. Suddenly, I hear a click and a buzz, like a switch turning on. The wall opens, and I fall forward as the fog escapes around me. I grab hold of the bars on the sides of the box and pull myself out, hanging from them. I have no idea how far down the drop is. All I can see is blackness, except for the orange glow from the box, which appears to be some kind of metal tube. I'm losing my grip on the bars, bracing for the fall. I pray it's not too far. I land on my feet, dropping only inches. I start to laugh, covering my mouth with my hands. Tears slowly roll down my cheeks as I cry soundlessly, relieved to finally be free. Whoever brought me here could still be nearby. I have to calm down. I have to think. It's so dark. I hate the dark, especially this pitch-black darkness. I wipe the tears from my cheeks with the back of my hands. I hold my arms out in front of me and take several slow steps forward. If I can find the wall, I can follow it to the door. Maybe I'll find a light switch along the way. I keep moving slowly. I don't have to wait long before I reach the wall. I sigh in relief. So far, so good. I inch along the wall. My hand brushes across a flat panel. Suddenly, the lights flicker on. I turn around and move into the middle of the room. The metal walls surround me. I look up at the box above me. It appears to be some kind of bed, like something out of a sci-fi movie.
A strange, metallic pot.
I reach up and touch the white sheet hanging from the edge of the pod. Quickly, I move away from it, taking in my surroundings. This must be some kind of lab, I think to myself. I look at the computer on top of a metal table, then at the medical instruments and chemicals on shelves built into the walls. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. There's no sign of any doors, although I must have been brought in somehow. Something moves in the corner of my eye. I jump, startled, and turn to see what's there. I move toward the mirror that shows my reflection. I stare back at my green eyes. I flatten my uncombed red hair. Why me? I have the worst luck ever. I say aloud. Pity session later, Dorothy. I turn slowly back, looking around. I notice another panel, similar to the one that turned on the lights. Maybe that's the one for the door, I think to myself as I walk toward it. I reach my hand up to it, hesitating. Oh, what's the worst that could happen? I wave my hand in front of it. Half of the wall to my right begins to retract into the ceiling, revealing a huge window. I stand there, shocked, at the view of the world outside. Before me is a vast green forest-like jungle stretching as far as the eye can see. But it's the purple sky and the two moons that make my mouth fall open. I pinch my arm hard to make sure I'm really awake.
Ouch.
Definitely awake. I step closer to the window, looking around. I realize I'm not inside a building, but a spaceship. A spaceship on another planet. I turn around, seeing one more panel I haven't tried yet. Did I even want to know what was behind door number 3? I think to myself. I walk over to the other side of the room. I wave my hand over the panel and wait. I start to step out into the hall and stop when a set of doors slides open. I stare out into a deserted hallway. I step out again and stop when another set of doors slides open at the other end. A man steps out, followed by two other men on each side of him. He's shorter than the other two and is wearing something like a lab coat. The other two men are wearing white long-sleeve shirts and black pants, their black boots coming up to their calves. They appear to be guards, though they don't seem to be carrying weapons. These beings seem human for all purposes, until I see their very pale eyes, which causes me to tremble with fear. I step back into the room, watching the door slide shut in front of me. This can't be happening. I quickly look around, wondering where I could hide. I could crawl back into the tube, I think to myself. If they hadn't seen me in the doorway, though I know they did. Looking around, I can see there's nowhere to hide. The tube is the last place I want to be, I think, glancing up at it. So, I slowly turn to face the door and wait for my kidnappers. I take several deep breaths, forcing myself to be brave, even though that's the very last thing I feel. I square my shoulders, and as the doors slide open, I declare, "Who are you, and why have you brought me here?" The man in the middle eyes me with a look that could be pride, but that can't be right. He's probably wondering what a strange creature I am. Chapter 2. The man, along with his guards, bows to me. Then he says, as they straighten themselves, "Forgive me for not having returned sooner. I had hoped to be present when you awoke, but our captain had need of me elsewhere. As for who we are, well, I am Zahn, and these are your personal guards. The reason for where and why you are here is not for me to explain, but know this: no harm shall come to you." I stand there, waiting for him to say more. When he doesn't and begins to approach me, I say, "I demand to know why you have brought me here." Zahn shakes his head. "My lady, please understand that you will be explained everything shortly. For now, I must run some tests." I ask, "What tests?" "You're not running any alien tests on me." I look around for some kind of weapon and find nothing, only a large book in a strange alien language. Holding it like a bat, I exclaim, "Don't come any closer, or I'll hit you. Right, like a whole lot of damage that will do. Dorothy." I think to myself. He stops and raises his hands. "There is no need for fear, my lady. The tests I wish to do are only to make sure you are completely healthy, that is all. As well as a simple communication device that will allow you to speak with our people, and they with you." "Who are your people?" I calmly ask, lowering the book a little.
He sighs.
"I wish I could explain everything to you, but as I said before, I know it's not your place," I exclaim. "Well, is there anything you can tell me?" He looks at me apologetically with his eerie pale eyes. "If I refuse to do these tests, will you force me?" I ask. "No force would ever be used," he says in shock, as if that would be unheard of. "But you will not be allowed to leave the medical room until the tests are carried out. It is for our people's well-being as well as yours." I set the book back on the table and nod at him, realizing I'll have to cooperate if I want answers. He smiles at me, saying, "You are as brave as we have all hoped." He seems to want to say more, but doesn't. Zahn motions for me to take a seat in the chair next to the table. He picks up a tube-like device with small lights on it, explaining that it is a type of scanner similar to the X-ray machines on Earth, but far more advanced. After scanning me, he picks up another device, a metallic silver tube, slimmer than the first, without any lights. He smiles at me. "This is how I will draw some blood. You will only feel a numbing sensation, and that is all. It is quite painless, my lady." He presses the device to my upper arm. Then he pulls it away, looks at the side, and smiles at me, exclaiming, "You are in perfect health." I ask, "Where is the blood?" He explains that the device only requires a drop of blood, and from that, it can tell him everything he needs to know. After inserting the communication device, a nano-sized chip, behind my ear, he nods and smiles at me. "I will return shortly. Your guards will be right outside if you need anything." With that, he turns and leaves the room. I sit there, confused, yet relieved that they didn't seem to want to hurt me. I look down at my pajamas, wondering what time it is on Earth. I try not to think about all the negative reasons for why they would have brought me to this world. Hugging myself, I think of escape, But where would I go? I reflect on my 40 years, thinking of all the things I have and haven't done. I had a nice apartment to call home and a good job that paid the bills. But I could have been so much more. I could have done so much more. I have an IQ way above normal. I went through high school and college while still in my early teens. I could have done anything, but I hadn't. I had no family or friends, which was how I preferred it. I had learned in my youth not to rely on anyone else. Being passed from one foster family to another was to blame for the person I had become. But I knew that I had chosen not to trust anyone. I didn't want to be hurt anymore. Now I'm here, on this planet, wishing I had let someone into my little circle. Wishing there was someone back on Earth who would even notice I was gone, who would care. I sigh, square my shoulders. I have to stay strong. Whatever I'm about to face, I have to keep my wits about me. Although these beings seem to wish me no harm, they brought me here for a reason, and until I know what that is, I have to be careful. I turn back around at the sound of the door sliding open. Zahn steps inside, followed by two beautiful twin females. Both are wearing elegant gowns with brooches attached to the straps. Zahn speaks, motioning to the female on his right. This is Sarah, and then to his left. And this is Zara. They shall show you to your room and assist you in preparing for dinner. I will escort you to see our captain once you are ready. With that, he bows and turns, leaving the lab without giving me a chance to ask him anything else. The women both bow toward me. Sarah speaks first. My lady, shall we show you to your room? She smiles at me, waiting for my answer. I nod, mumbling. Doesn't look like I have any other choice. Zara asks, what was that, my lady? I smile, saying, lead the way. My name is Dorothy, so you don't have to call me my lady. They look at each other, then smile shyly at me. Yes, my lady, they reply. They turn to walk out of the room, with me following close behind. I feel more like a prisoner than a guest, as the two tall guards close in behind me. We continue walking down the hall and get onto an elevator. The ride is so smooth I can't tell whether we're traveling up or down. The doors slide open quickly without making a sound. We step out into a multiple hallway. As we walk down it, everyone else stops walking, bowing as we pass by them. It's so odd. I guess it's some kind of strange custom of theirs, I think to myself. Sarah comes to a stop at an elaborate door. She waves her hand in front of the panel on the right side, and the door slides open. Sarah and Zara step aside, allowing me to step inside first. They follow me inside, with the guards remaining outside the entrance. This is my room? I ask in shock. They both smile and say together, yes. The room is very large, with a beautifully carved bed. The carving is similar to the pictures of the brooches that the women and guards were wearing, images of a bear-like, half-lizard creature carved into the wood. The creature is even shown flying in some of the carvings. I hope this is not a real animal, I exclaim out loud. Sarah answers, oh, the Artthians are very real, my lady, but there's no reason to fear them. They are much like the animals you call, what is the word? Oh yes, horses. They are plant eaters as well, even though their appearance would lead one to think otherwise. She giggles. I shiver at the thought, although part of me would love to see one. I shake my head at that, then turn to look at the women. I smile at them. Zara speaks. My lady, I shall go prepare your bath. She then turns, walking over to a small panel, waving her hand in front of it. She disappears into another room. Sarah gently takes me by the hand and guides me toward another door. The door slides open, revealing a large closet full of beautiful dresses. She begins to look through them, pausing now and then to glance at me, then back at the dresses. She finally stops at a dress, a lovely green. She smiles, saying, this is the one. It matches your eyes perfectly. She walks out of the closet and lays the dress across the bed. Chapter 3. Zara reappears and escorts me into the lavish bathroom. She explains the different soaps at my insistence that I can bathe myself. Zara leaves, saying she will be just outside if I need anything. After removing my clothes, I step into the warm water. I sink down into the tub, slowly resting my head on my knees as I try to clear my thoughts. After I finish bathing, I wrap myself in a towel and walk back into the other room. The women are sitting together, cheerfully chatting. They become very quiet once they see me. Sarah smiles at me and says, "I'm sure you feel much better now. Shall we try the dress?" Sarah hands me the different undergarments. After I slip them on under my robe, they help me into the dress, despite my protests that I can dress myself. Zara exclaims, "You're behaving much like a young one. There is no shame in us helping you dress. That is why we are here."
I sigh.
Yes, I know that, but I'm not a child, and I don't need your help doing this.
Arg.
Sarah says, "There. Perfect," as she yanks the gown down the rest of my body. I look at both of them, and then back down at the dress. This dress is way too big. I think we'll have what? I gasp as the dress suddenly shrinks to fit me perfectly. Sarah giggles at my reaction. It is large on silk. The fabric instantly shrinks or stretches to fit whomever wears it. Looking down at the dress, I mumble, "Fascinating." After curling my hair, Zara says, "Come, see how beautiful you look, my lady." She leads me to a wall and another panel. A full-length ornate mirror is revealed. I gaze at myself, not recognizing the person standing there. I touch my face in shock. This is too much. The person standing there looks like she's in her early or mid-20s. I look younger and thinner. Turning in a circle, I can't believe my own eyes that are now an eerie pale green. Part of me is exhilarated, but the other half trembles with fear. I cry out, "What have you done to me? What kind of experiments? How is this even possible?" I didn't even hear Zahn enter the room. He answers me, "There have been no experiments performed on you, my lady." Looking at him, I ask, "Then how is it that I look younger, thinner? Is it the dress or the mirror? And what about my eyes? What is this?" Zahn looks away, then says, "We shall go meet the captain. He will explain everything, my lady." I glare at him, feeling angry and helpless. I am very, very tired of not having my questions answered. Instead of showing how afraid I am, I push it down, hanging on to my anger and using that to appear brave. I don't want them to see how scared I really feel. I think to myself that this captain better answer my questions, and soon. I storm up to Zahn, looking him in the eyes. I say, "Well, after you," motioning to the door. One of Zahn's eyebrows arches, and he nods his head. Then he turns and walks out of the room. We walk in silence, the guards following closely behind us. Zahn leads me down several different hallways until we come to a large door. I follow Zahn inside, with the guards remaining outside. We are standing in a large dining room. A table is set up with 3 seats. I stand there, anxiously awaiting what's to come next. A man dressed in a pale blue uniform walks toward us. He is tall with a stern look on his face. He looks to be about 35 years old, but his eyes seem much older. He stands a few feet from me. Zahn says, "Allow me to introduce you. This is Captain Artthian." Looking back at me, Captain Artthian smiles. "And this is the lady, Dorothy." Captain Artthian bows to me, then motions toward the table. "Shall we sit? I had the chef prepare some of his famous dishes for you. I do hope you will enjoy our food." Captain Artthian walks over to the table and pulls out a chair for me. I glance at Zahn, who nods, then back to the captain and sit down in the offered chair. After I am seated, both Zahn and Captain Artthian take their seats. The captain motions with his hand, and several women start bringing out the food. Hoping to finally have my answers, I look down at the plate of food placed in front of me. Not recognizing anything, I ask in a rush, "Why have you kidnapped me? What do you want from me?" I look at Captain Artthian, waiting for an answer, completely at my breaking point. He says, "We shall eat first, my lady, then all your questions will be answered." I push the plate of food away from me as I glare at him, saying, "I've waited long enough. I demand to know why I am here." He sighs as he takes a sip of the green drink that had been poured for him. He places the glass back down and slowly replies, "Very well. Although this is not our way of conducting things, I know this has been a huge, frightful change for you. There is much to explain. You'll have your answers, but first, I will tell you a story. A story about our people, the Garlandians, and our past. It was odd the way he said our people as if they were mine too. The planet you are on is called Isseare. Many years ago, our people were at war with another tribe called the Artthians. Our tribe was peaceful. We did not even have a single warrior among us, scientists, artists, scholars, and so on. He pauses, standing up, then slowly walks to the window and looks out. He continues, "How old do you think I am, Dorothy?" I look at his back. I would say 30 or 35 years old. His head slowly turns to the side, a small smile on his face. He says, "That young?"
My years are much longer than that.
I am 200 years old. I gasp. That's impossible. I press my lips together, not having meant to say that aloud. The captain continues, "The people on this planet live longer here. Zahn can explain that better to you than I. We age very slowly and can live to be 500 years old." He continues, "I wish you could have seen our planet before the war began." He pauses for a second, seeming deep in thought, before continuing. "I was there before the war began. I have watched what it has done to our people. King Orlean was losing the war. As I had said, we were not warriors. He believed if the Artthians won, they would murder or enslave his family. So, he had his scientists search throughout the galaxy for an inhabitable planet, one similar to our own. They found yours. In secret, we began preparing his family for the travel to Earth." I interrupt him, feeling anxious about where this is heading, but I don't understand what any of this has to do with me. Captain Artthian sighs. "Patience, my dear. You'll understand soon enough. Now, where was I?" Zahn whispers, "The royal family preparing for Earth." He nods. Everything was done in secret. Only those who were needed knew about the plans. He feared that if the Artthians ever learned of this, they would follow them to Earth. I was one of the few chosen. My father had been the king's best friend.
I was like a son to him, and he, a father to me.
Anyway, the royal family left for their new home, and the king remained here in hopes of winning the war, so that one day his family could return. But we did not study the effects Earth's atmosphere would have on their bodies. Their lives were shortened, only living a few years past 100. So, for the royal bloodline not to die, they took human mates, hoping that one day their descendants could return and take the throne. King Orlean did not know that one day he would be able to make a peace treaty with the Artthians, a shaky one, at that. If he had known, he would have never sent them away. Before King Orlean passed away, he left me the responsibility of finding his kin and bringing home his heir to the throne. Captain Artthian turns around and looks at me. He says, "Dorothy, your true name is Princess Isseare. You are that descendant. You are the only one left of the royal bloodline. It has taken me 50 years to honor my king's request." Chapter 4. I didn't want to believe what he said, even with the image of myself in the mirror still fresh in my mind. I stared at him in shock as I said, "You have to be mistaken. I am not some alien hybrid. I am a human. Look at me. I'm not the one you want." Captain Artthian nods at Zahn. Zahn takes out a small pad and hands it to me. On it are DNA samples, 2 of them. Zahn says, "The DNA sequence on the left is the king's, and the one on the right is yours, my lady. The difference you can see are normal human DNA, but the genetic proof that shows his blood runs through your veins is very apparent. You are his great-great-granddaughter. This is also why you've started to look younger, and why your eye color has changed. Here on Isseare, your lifespan will be much longer, due to the fact that your Garlandian genes have started to take over." I laid the pad down, thinking this can't be right. There must be other descendants besides me, someone else who could be your leader. I'm not a leader. You have to find someone else, I thought. Captain Artthian answers me. I have looked everywhere on Earth. Only one of his sons had success in having children. That was your great-grandfather. Your parents, who died in a car accident, had only one child. That was you. You are the only choice, princess. You must take the throne and become our leader. The Artthians see that we have no queen, and due to their laws, our land and people are for the taking. If you do not, we will be enslaved by the Artthians. We are already at war with them again.
Our only hope is you.
I look at him, saying, okay, so, say I believe this, that I'm his heir, but still, the fact remains that I know nothing about being a queen or making peace with the Artthians. Surely, there is someone who would be better at leading your people than me, like you. You have to be better suited for the job than me. So, just return me to Earth, and then come back here and lead your people. Captain Artthian smiles. I'm flattered by your compliment, but I am a soldier, not part of the royal family. It is not my place. It is yours. This is your home now. The sooner you come to terms with this, the better it will be for all of us. Tomorrow, my wife will start your training. With that, the captain takes his seat back at the table. We eat in silence. An hour later, Zahn and the guards escort me back to my room. I stand there, feeling more alone than ever before. I curl up in the middle of the bed, shaken and tired, without even the strength to undress. I cry myself to sleep, thinking this is a nightmare I wish I would wake up from soon. I awake to Sarah and Zara hurrying into my room. Zara suddenly exclaims, "You didn't sleep in your dress all night, did you?" "Oh, you poor thing, you've been crying too." Sarah sighs. "I can't imagine the shock of learning you're a princess and heir to the throne." They were both busying themselves around the room, Zara moving in and out of the bathroom while Sarah looked through the clothes in the closet. Neither gave me a chance to speak or think. Sarah looks at me, smiling. "Today, Lady Artthian will begin teaching you everything you need to know about your new life here with us." Zara chimed in from the bathroom, "And those nasty Artthians." Several hours later, I was dressed, and we were walking out to meet Lady Artthian. They led me to a huge garden. Sarah had explained that it had once been a cargo room, but Lady Artthian had convinced her husband to allow her to turn it into a garden. Zara smiled at me. "Go on. You'll be able to find her by yourself. Just stay on the path. Don't be frightened, your guards will be right outside." With that, they both turned and walked back out the door. I turned around, looking down the path between the overgrowth of flowers and trees I had never seen before. Walking slowly down the path, I came around a corner, finding a woman tending to a strange-looking purple vine with huge blood-red flowers on it. The vine started to shake as I approached her. "Shuh, there's no need for that. It's just our princess." "Shuh," she continued cooing to the vine until it stilled. After readjusting one of the vines, she turned to me. Unable to contain my curiosity, I asked, "What type of plant is that? Is it some kind of animal hybrid?" Lady Artthian nodded. "It's called a whispering vine. It is very intelligent. Our children here on Isseare have them as pets. They can live out of the ground for some time before needing to be returned to the earth. The shaking is their way of alerting one to danger or showing they're upset about something." Lady Artthian laughed. "Forgive me, I haven't introduced myself."
I'm Flor Artthian.
"You can call me Flor. I tend to go on and on about my lovely plants, but I believe there are more important things for us to discuss."
You smiled ahead.
"I don't mind. I find it fascinating." Part of me wished she would keep talking about her plants and not this nightmare I was in. She started down another path, motioning for me to follow her. A small clearing appeared with a blanket laid out with food on it. Lady Flor smiled. "I thought something familiar would be a welcoming sight to you. Shall we sit?" I sat down on the blanket, saying, "Thank you." She smiled. "I had the chef prepare some human dishes. My husband, Bruce, had told me you did not eat very much the other night." I gave her a little nod. I didn't have much of an appetite. After we ate, she began talking about the Artthians and how they came to live on Isseare. The Artthians are very alien in their appearance, taller, faster, and stronger than any Garlandians. With light silver skin and dark piercing eyes that could cause fear in even the bravest of men, they had traveled to this planet in hopes of making a new home for their people. The king of the Artthians explained to the Garlandians that their world had been made uninhabitable due to war. Since their world had been a water planet, They only wished to live on, and in the seas of Isseare. The Artthians seemed sincere about living in peace with the Garlandians. During that time, the Garlandian people were very peaceful beings, so they allowed the Artthians to stay. After some time, she looked at me. I'm sorry, this must be overwhelming to you. One night, you go to sleep safe in your own bed, and the next, you wake up to find your whole life has changed. I want you to know we weighed our options before taking you, my dear. I sat there, tightly holding my glass. I sighed, saying, it's just, all of this is so unreal. I feel like I'm living a nightmare. I just want it to end. How am I supposed to be a queen? The leader of my people? I laughed a little hysterically, saying, I'm just a waitress. Covering my hand with hers, Lady Flor replied, I can't imagine what you're going through. But I want you to know that I wish to be your friend. I will try to help you adjust as much as I can. I will teach you what you need to know to assume the throne. In time, you will adjust to your new home here with us. She paused, motioning if I wanted more tea. She did make me feel more at ease. She continued, the reason we are still on this ship is that we were attacked by the Artthians when we started to re-enter Isseare. We landed here, in this forest, miles outside of our city. The reason they haven't found us yet is because of a shield concealing us from everyone. I asked, so that's why no one was in the lab when I awoke? Lady Flor nodded. Plus, you were placed in the lab that has weapons installed in it. None of our enemies would have been able to get down there to you. Anyway, we only have a few days before you will have to begin traveling to our city. The Artthians are camped around the city and are fighting to get inside. But they have underestimated us. We are no longer the weak beings they once saw us as. I looked at her. So, how are we going to get into the city? Are we going to fly the ship there, right? I knew before she answered me that I was not going to like what she had to say. Lady Flor's smile faded as she said, I'm sorry, but I wish it was that simple. I believe you, along with a small group of warriors, will have to make your way to the city. My husband will be going with you as well. After you have taken the throne, you will then have to speak with the leader of the Artthians and make a new peace treaty. That is why you need to learn as much as you can about them. I did not say anything, but just sat there. I feared things were probably going to get a lot worse before they got better. Later that night, outside my room, Lady Flor gives me a type of virtual book. She says, this will help you understand the Artthians a bit better as well as your people. It's like what you would call a movie. After showing me how to use it, she says, I will see you tomorrow. Sweet dreams, my dear. Giving me a motherly hug, she turns, leaving me alone. I enter my room feeling lost and unsure about everything. I slip into my night clothes and sit on the bed, flipping it flat. I touch the button that turns it on. Instead of pages, miniature people appear on top of the pad. They begin to move around and talk. They look so real. I tried to pick one of them up, but the little person stood solid in my hand. When I moved it from over the pad, the person disappeared. I exclaimed, wow. I picked up the pad, looking under it and wondering how it worked. Shaking my head, I set the pad back on the bed and turned it back on, turning up the volume. I watched as the story began. As the days passed, I was learning more about the big beings I was with. Besides what I was learning from Lady Flor, the captain also had his second-in-command, Ethan, teaching me some self-defense moves. Captain Artthian wanted to be sure that I could defend myself in case no one was there to protect me. Luckily, this wasn't something new to me, as I had taken some self-defense classes on Earth. What was new was the fact that I was now more agile and stronger than any human could be. This was proof that I was part Garlandian. I later learned that Captain Artthian had devised a plan for a small group, including me, to travel through the forest to the city. The path would hopefully take us around most of the Artthian camps. Today, Sarah and Zara were in my room, rushing about, packing the bags that I would be taking with me. I was already dressed in a black shirt, pants, and boots. The items had the ability to blend into the wearer's surroundings. Zara said, well, I think that's it. Oh, please do be careful, my princess. She stood there wringing her hands, then wiped a tear from her cheek. Sarah took my hand as Zara picked up the pack. Sarah said. You must remember that the Artthians are very dangerous. Never let your guard down in front of one. Then Zara said, We will walk with you to the cargo bay. We walked in silence to the cargo bay, along with my personal guards. Once there, Zara and Sarah gave me a final hug, saying their goodbyes and wishing me a safe journey. I quietly watched the small group of tough-looking men who were preparing to leave on our journey. None of them spoke to me, except for Ethan, who laid out a map on the table. He began to go over the route for the 100th time, but now I could probably get there by myself. Chapter 5. Captain Artthian walks into the room. He looks at each of us, then says to Ethan, Do we have everything? Ethan nods. We're ready to go, sir. Captain Artthian walks over toward me as he says, Good. As he stands in front of me, he holds out a cloth-covered object. He explains, This belongs to your grandfather. Now it belongs to you. I pray that you never have to use it, but if so, I hope that it will save your life as it had saved the king's many times before. I take the object, whispering, Thank you. I stand there carefully, unwrapping the dagger. The blade was wickedly sharp-looking. As I turned it over in my hands, I noticed the handle had the shape of an Artthipas carved into it. Captain Artthian turns toward his men, with his arms behind his back. He says, Today we shall bring our princess home, and hopefully bring peace to our land once more. With our small group, we started out of the ship and into the field outside, which consists of Captain Artthian, Ethan, my 2 guards, and a man I hadn't met until today. Once outside, I am completely taken aback by the sight of 5 huge, wingless Arthipas. I look at Ethan.
He didn't say anything about that.
I exclaim, Ethan. He gives me a reassuring smile, saying, There is nothing to fear, my lady. They are very safe. They will cut our journey in half. By nightfall, we will be on the other side of the forest and around the Artthians' base. Besides, you'll be riding with Captain Artthian, and he is one of our best riders. Ethan walks toward the creatures and climbs onto one. Captain Artthian motions for me to join him.
Reluctantly, Ido.
Ethan is right. There is nothing to fear. The Arthipas are very gentle animals. Captain Artthian pets the beast, motioning for me to do the same. Slowly, I reach my hand up to its furry chest. The Arthipas softly growls, lowering his head toward me in response. Captain Artthian smiles at me. That means he likes you. I stand there, looking up at the large animal, saying, I'd hate to know what he'd sound like if he didn't. Chuckling. Captain Artthian climbs up onto the Arthipas' back, offering me his hand. Come on. We have a long way to go before nightfall, my lady. Ethan was right. By night, we had traveled all the way to the other side of the forest, which should have taken us several days on foot. The Arthipas are unbelievably fast for their huge size. Captain Artthian helps me down as the men release the Arthipas. Captain Artthian explains that they would be unable to take them the rest of the way. We have to travel by foot, up the back of the mountain which overlooks the ocean. It would be impossible to climb unless you knew the path to follow, he explains to me. The Artthians do not guard it. They believe we would not risk it. He then says, We shall rest here for the night, princess. After you eat, you should get some sleep. I will take the first shift. Then Carter and Henry will take the next. Captain Artthian continues, giving out the night watch shifts to his men. I quickly fall asleep next to the warm fire. I roll over, staring up at the stars in the night sky, feeling wide awake. I had this strange, uneasy feeling that something wasn't right. I slowly sit up a little, just in time to see a figure jump out toward Captain Artthian. I cry out, waking up the other sleeping men. They all jump up, grabbing their weapons. I grab my dagger from under my pillow and run behind the rocks where Ethan and Captain Artthian had told me to hide. I quickly kneel down as I watched the men fight with each other. I felt completely helpless to help them, or myself. I knew I had to do something to stop this, but what? That was the whole reason why I was on this planet, I thought to myself. I looked back over to where Captain Artthian had been. The Artthian soldier had him pinned to the ground. He was choking him to death. I looked around to see if anyone was going to help Captain Artthian, but the other two Artthians were managing to keep Ethan and the others very busy. I held the dagger tightly in my hand as I quickly and quietly came up behind the Artthian, grabbing him tightly by the hair, just like Ethan had showed me. I pressed the tip of my blade against the Artthian's throat. I exclaim, "Release him, or I will kill you." I hoped I sounded more confident than I felt. I thought to myself. He continued to choke the captain. Wrapping my hand tighter in his hair, I yanked his head back so that we made eye contact and growled, "Let him go."
Now.
I pressed the blade a little deeper, trying to ignore the drop of blood running down his neck. I whispered, "Please, I don't want to kill you, but I will if you leave me no choice." Looking into my eyes, the Artthian glared at me. Finally, he released Captain Artthian. The Artthian looked back at Artthian as he stood up. He says, "This isn't over, Artthian. I will kill you." I looked from the Artthian back to Captain Artthian. Keeping a tight hold on the man, I asked, "Are you okay?" Captain Artthian nodded. "Prince Caballero, tell your men to put down their weapons and surrender now." I gasped, looking down at the man I held by the hair. From what I had learned about him, Prince Caballero was the most feared of all the Artthians. He was a great warrior. Swallowing hard, I tightened my grip on the knife, hoping they did not see my hands shaking. I sensed there was more going on between the two of them, and I was right. The prince said, "Don't think I've forgotten what you've done. You will pay with your life, Captain Artthian." He sighed. "I was under orders to kill your father, Prince, which, as we both know, I failed." I glanced from them back to the other men, who were still fighting. Losing my patience, I said, "We don't have time for this. Tell your men to stop or I will." The prince said in a bored voice, "I know you'll kill me." Then he spoke in the Artthian language, instructing his men to put down their weapons and surrender. The Garlandian soldiers bound their unwelcome guests. Captain Artthian checked to make sure they wouldn't be able to cut their bonds, then said, "You should rest, my lady. In the morning, we shall begin our travels anew, along with our new pets." He placed his hand over mine, still holding the dagger. "You did well, my lady. The king would have been very proud." Smiling at me, he went back to his men. I sat back on my blanket with the strange feeling of being watched. I turned to find Prince Caballero studying me intently. I quickly turned my back on him, trying to shake the uneasiness I was feeling. I slipped my hand under my pillow and squeezed the handle of the knife tightly in my hand. I closed my eyes, slowly falling back to sleep. Chapter 6. As we stood at the bottom of the mountain, I couldn't believe the distance we would have to climb. The castle looked like a child's playhouse from where I stood. The jagged rocks and boulders sticking out of the mountainside were just as menacing. Ethan walked past me, starting up the small path as he scouted ahead. Captain Artthian walked over to stand beside me. "Don't worry," he said, sensing my nervousness. "Just keep your gaze towards the sky and you'll be fine." He patted me on the back. He then turned to his men, saying, "Let Dorothy stay close to me. You three, bring the prisoners. Let's begin up the path." I followed behind them. We walked in silence up the winding path. Ethan reappeared sometime later with news that some boulders were blocking the path ahead. Once we reached the boulders, Captain Artthian turned toward us. "Prince, sit and rest for now. You three, secure the prisoners. Then 2 of you get up here to help us move some of these rocks." I watched as 3 soldiers took the chains binding the Artthians and sank them into the rock face. The 2 men then went to Captain Artthian and Ethan to help with moving the rocks, leaving only 1 soldier behind to watch over the prisoners. Captain Artthian told Ethan to scout ahead once the rocks were cleared enough for us to pass. He turned to everyone, saying, "Prepare to move out." Before we started up the path, Ethan returned, saying, "The path looks clear, but it's very steep, sir." Captain Artthian nodded. "My lady, you follow Ethan up the path and watch your step." He motioned to the guard to start bringing the Artthians up the path, starting with the prince. I turned to follow Ethan. As I walked up the path, suddenly, I heard a yell behind me. Turning, I saw one of the Artthians fighting one of the Garlandian soldiers. I watched in horror as their fight brought them closer and closer to the edge of the cliff. Ethan moved past me, back down to help Captain Artthian with the man. He passed Prince Caballero and his guards, who were standing in front of us, watching the scene unfold. Chain the prince to the cliff, they rushed off to help. I started to quickly follow them, even though Ethan had told me to stay put. Not watching my step, my foot slipped out from under me, and I began sliding down the path. Reaching my hands behind me, I clawed at the ground, trying to stop my descent. Suddenly, I was jerked to a stop. I looked up and saw that it was Prince Caballero who had grabbed my hands as I was sliding past him. He pulled me up beside him. We sat there, our hands still intertwined, staring into each other's eyes. I blinked and whispered, "You saved me." "Why?" Prince Caballero only stared at me with those icy, cold eyes of his, reminding me more and more of a shark. He opened his mouth to say something, but then a scream pierced the air. We turned just in time to see the two men fall off the side of the cliff into the ocean below. I jerked to run toward them, but the prince didn't let me go. I stopped struggling as he said, "It's too late. There's nothing we can do for them now. At least not for the Garlandian scum. But hopefully, Charles will have survived the fall." I glared at him.
How?
Hitting the water from this height would have been like hitting cement. Prince Caballero shrugged his shoulders, saying, "We are Artthians." Releasing my hands, he nodded his head toward the others. I turn and see Captain Artthian approaching us. He says, "If you have harmed her in any way, I will kill you right now." I stand up, blocking them from each other. I explain, "He saved my life. I was falling down the path. If it wasn't for him, I would have fallen over the cliff too." Captain Artthian nods, but still glares at the prince. Prince Caballero says from behind me, "You Garlandians are pathetic. You cannot even protect your own men. How do you expect to protect your own princess?" Captain Artthian smiles menacingly and says, "You will not have your chance today, Artthian. I do not provoke that easily." He quickly turns, ordering the guards standing behind him to keep a close eye on the prince. I shake my head. Stop trying to start a fight with him. When he tried to kill your father, he was just a soldier following orders, just as you've given plenty of orders in the past. He just stood there, staring down at me with that same cold expression as before. I groan and walk past him, heading back up the path. Later that night, we camped out at the entrance of the cave that would take us into the castle. I decided to approach the prince about why he saved me earlier today. Walking over to him with 2 plates of food, I gave the other Artthian his plate, then walked over to the prince. I handed him his plate. He picked at his food as I sat down on a rock across from him. Taking a bite of my food, he eyed me curiously. I cleared my throat and asked, "Why did you do it?" He was looking at the guard that was watching us closely. "Do what?" he asked. I said, "You saved me." "Why?" "You could have just sat there and watched me fall to my death, but you didn't." He looked at me. "You should go back to your campfire, princess. We wouldn't want you to get cold." I replied in the same arrogant voice, "Not until you answer me, prince." He looked at me, the corner of his lips pulling into a half-smile. Then, as quietly as it came, it was gone. He said, "Perhaps I wanted to kill myself. Slowly. I wonder how long it would take a halfling like you to die." At that, the guard started to hit him. The guard said, "You piece of..." I motioned for him to stop. "No, it's okay. It's just words." The guard looked me in the eyes. "I'll be right here if you need me." I nodded. I turned back to the prince. I watched him for a while, then said, "You know, I lower my voice so only he could hear me. I think you're tired of all the fighting and death, just like the Garlandians." He started to say something, but I held my hand up. As he glared at me, I continued, "No, let me finish. If you wanted me dead, that was your chance. You didn't take it. Instead, you saved me. The whole reason I'm here is to bring peace to my people and yours. You know that, that's why you saved me." I stood up, waiting for him to reply, but he only stared at me, chewing his food. He shrugged his shoulders, not saying anything else to me. I turned and walked back to my bed by the fire. The next morning, We woke early to begin our journey into the cave. The Garlandians each made torches. They were lighting them as Captain Artthian was inspecting the prisoners' chains. "We should be inside the castle by nightfall," he said. We started our journey into the dark cave, with Captain Artthian leading the way. I felt apprehensive, knowing that soon I would be meeting the people of Isseare and becoming their new leader. Would I even be able to end this war that has been going on between these beings for so long? Would I know the right words to say to them to bring peace to this world? I shook my head, trying to clear it. I can't start doubting myself now. I stared at Ethan's back, wondering how long we had been walking and how much further we had to go. Without the sun shining on our backs, it was hard to keep track of time. "How much farther is the city?" I asked Ethan. He looked back at me, saying, "It should be only a few more hours before we reach the gate into the castle." "Are you tired, my lady?" I'm sure the captain would stop. I interrupted him, saying, "Oh, I'm fine. I was just wondering, that's all." Ethan nodded, turning back around. Suddenly, Captain Artthian stopped, bringing a halt to our group. Captain Artthian whispered to Ethan, "There's a light ahead. It could be Captain Carmine's group. Wait here. I'll check to make sure before we continue." A few minutes passed, and he reappeared, motioning for us to join him. We rounded the corner, entering a large chamber. Flickering orbs with some type of markings on them floated in the air, lighting up the room. Several Garlandian soldiers stood guarding the gate, which appeared to be two large wooden doors. Captain Artthian stood with Captain Carmine, cheerfully talking to him. Suddenly, the way we had entered was blocked by more soldiers, each holding lethal swords. The man with Captain Artthian said, "I'm sorry, I had no choice, my friend. Forgive me." Captain Carmine backed away from Artthian, pulling out his sword. He declared, "Put your weapons down now. You're all prisoners of King Larg." Captain Artthian yelled, "Protect the princess." Ethan and the other men formed a circle around me as Captain Carmine's guards advanced on us. The prince laughed. "You Garlandians cannot even keep peace with each other. How pathetic." I turned to glare at him, just in time to see one of the guards punch him in the gut. Ethan looked at me, saying, "When I tell you to run, run." He grabbed hold of my sleeve, saying, "Hide." I nodded, tightening my fingers around the dagger that I hoped I wouldn't have to use. I also hoped the clothes I was wearing could truly hide me from view. I would soon find out. The men approaching us stopped, standing only a few feet away. I asked Ethan, who stood in front of me, "What are they waiting for?" Before Ethan could answer, the gate to the castle opened and a single man walked through it. More soldiers followed behind him and spaced themselves throughout the chamber. The man stood there, not speaking to anyone, only staring coldly right at me. He said, "Come here, child. Let me see the one my uncle would have preferred as his successor." Captain Artthian growled, "I think you can see her just fine from where you are, Larg. How is it that you have my men following you?" I said, "I don't understand. You said there was no one else in the king's bloodline." I pushed past Ethan to stand beside Artthian. I stared from Artthian to the man who most likely wished me dead. Larg said, "Oh, there aren't, my dear. Or shall we say, there won't be once I have taken care of you." He smiled, continuing before Artthian could speak. "I am not a direct descendant of our late king. My mother was a stepsister, so you see, the king's blood does not run through my veins." He looked back at Artthian, smiling. "While you were gone, my old friend, I was able to, how shall I put it, persuade the elders to elect me as king. Besides, our people need a true Garlandian, not some halfing whelp." Captain Artthian growled, "I won't let you get away with this, you Tarsine worm." Larg replied, smiling, "I already have." King Larg waved his arm in the air, as if shooing a fly, and said, "Kill all of them." He turned, walking back through the gate. The door slowly closed behind him. I was suddenly shoved back into the center of the circle as the men began to fight for their lives and mine. Prince Caballero moved up beside Ethan, along with the other Artthians. They stood there, ready to fight a battle that was not theirs to fight. Prince Caballero said to Ethan, "There are too many of them. "Untie us now, Ethan." Ethan growled, "So you can stab us in the back while we're fighting our enemies?" "I think not." Prince Caballero pushed Ethan, saying, "If Larg remains in rule, then both my people and yours will never have peace. Release us so we can fight with you. Or do you wish to see your princess blood smeared on the ground?" I watched as Ethan grabbed his knife, and then the other man, as he freed them. He said, "If they make one false move toward us, kill them." The other Garlandian soldiers murmured their agreements. My attention returned to Captain Artthian. He stood only a few feet from the other captain, speaking to him in a low voice. I asked Ethan, "What are they saying to each other, and why haven't they attacked us yet? What are they waiting for?" I looked around at all the Garlandian soldiers that stood glaring at us, their swords drawn but motionless, even though they had been ordered to kill us. Ethan replied, "Because Larg has ordered them to kill their own people. But not only that, we have all trained and fought together. I think of many here as friends, brothers. That's their godfather to my children. And now I may have to kill him." He nodded his head toward an older man standing near the gate. Then he said, "I think the captain is trying to talk Carmine out of following Larg's orders. If you can sway him to our side, the others will follow him. I pray he succeeds." Prince Caballero, who now had his own sword, said, "He's not convincing him, Ethan." With that, he moved into a fighting stance. I looked at him, then at Ethan. They both looked grim. I asked, "How do you know?" "They both look calm enough." Ethan said, "Cress, they're very good listeners for a fish." Prince Caballero glared at him, then shrugged his shoulders. I exclaimed, "You can hear them. What are they saying?" The prince replied, "Doesn't matter. Larg has his family in prison, so even if he wanted to switch sides, he won't. So, get ready now." I gasped as each man was suddenly defending themselves. The clash of their swords was deafening within the circle I stood. Ethan yelled out, "Tighten the circle. Don't let any of them through." I watched in horror as he stabbed a man in the chest. All around me, the men I had been traveling with were fighting to keep me alive. Even their 2 Artthian prisoners were fiercely holding the circle to protect me. I wanted it to stop. All the blood, the loss of life. For what? There was nothing I could do but watch and wait for my chance to run. I watched the Artthians, who moved with such deadly grace against the Garlandians, while the Garlandians fought with such brute force compared to them. Hearing Captain Artthian's agonizing cry, I looked toward where he had last stood. I held my breath, thinking he had been injured. Instead, I saw him holding the other captain in a strange embrace. Pulling back, he removed his sword from the other man's body, gently lowering him to the ground. Artthian whispered something to him as the man's hand went limp in his own. He slowly stood up, then charged toward the Garlandian soldiers. I watched as he brutally fought his way toward the gate. Our small circle had somehow moved in front of the entrance we had come through. The soldiers who had guarded it now lay dead. The Garlandian men that had stood behind me were now moving in front of me, guarding me and the way out of the room. Ethan yelled, "Run, princess, now." I looked at his back. I can't just leave. I want to help. There has to be something I can do. Ethan moved back toward me, allowing the man by his side to close the gap. He grabbed me by the arm and quickly pulled me down the path. He said, "You want to help? Then escape, princess. Do not look back. Do not stop. This suit can make you invisible. Use that and live. That is how you can help us. Find a way to take back the throne that is rightfully yours. If any of us survive, we will find you somehow. Take this virtual map." He pressed a small square locator device into my hand. "This can guide you back to the ship, but be careful and trust no one. Now go," he said, pushing me down the path. He then turned and rejoined his men. I slowly backed down the path, watching them fight. My heart sank as I turned and ran. This wasn't right, I thought to myself. How can I just leave? I brushed tears from my cheeks, coming almost to a stop as I moved toward the opening of the cave. I turned back, saying aloud to myself, "No, I have to help them." Chapter 7. I pressed the button on my suit, becoming invisible. If they can't see me, maybe I can knock the soldiers out or something. As I near the entrance to the room, I move close to the wall, watching the soldiers fight. I grab a rock off the ground, holding it tightly in my hand. It becomes invisible as I close my fingers around it. This could work, I think to myself. I just have to be careful. Prince Caballero was fighting off 2 men, and a third was moving up behind him. They were fighting closest to where I stood. I moved quickly toward the one who was intending to stab the prince in the back. I hit him on the head, hoping to knock him out. The man fell, and Prince Caballero took out the 2 soldiers in front of him. He growled, turning and sniffing the air. I watched in horror as he whirled his sword, charging toward me. He's going to kill me. Instead, he shoved me aside, knocking me to the ground. I watched as he quickly took down the man who had been about to kill me. I didn't understand. How could they see me? I looked down at my hands, which were invisible. Looking up, I found Prince Caballero standing over me, breathing heavily. He growled, "Get up." As I slowly stood up, I whispered, "You can smell me, can't you?" He looked back at the Garlandian, then back at me. He pushed me hard towards the path outside. "Go now." He followed close behind me, leaving me no other option. As we reached the outside, I pressed the button on my suit, becoming visible again. "You could have gotten yourself killed," the prince said to me. He grabbed the locator device from my belt and tossed it to the ground. "Hey, I need that." I yelled at him as I started to pick it back up. "Leave it." I deleted the information stored in it. "It's no good to you now, princess." I glared up at him. "So, you're going to kill me now? Is that it?" I watched him as he looked down one side of the mountain and up the other side. Then he moved toward the cliff, looking down, walking back towards me. He said, "I could, if that's what you want, but I was thinking more along the lines of saving your life." He grabbed me by the arm and pushed me toward the edge of the cliff. He asked, "Can you swim?" I gasped, trying to jerk my arm out of his hand. I said, "You have to be joking. It's too far. No one can survive that fall." He shook me, saying, "That's not what I asked, princess. Can you swim?" Looking around as he spoke to me, I gasped from the pain he was causing to my arm. I cried, "Yes." He looked down at me, saying, "Good. Hold onto me tightly and don't let go." He started to pull me into his embrace, but I struggled against him. "You're crazy. I am not jumping. You jump. If you want to, I'll take the path back down," I said. Prince Caballero suddenly let go of me. He replied, "Listen, do you hear that?" I stood there listening, not hearing anything at first. Then I slowly heard the faint sound of men's voices. I looked toward the path down the mountain and said, "No, more soldiers are coming." I looked back toward the opening of the cave. "We have to warn them." The prince grabbed my arm as he said, "They can take care of themselves. I have to get you out of here now." I looked at him, "But it's too far." He pulled me back into his arms, holding me tightly. He only said, "I'm Artthian, remember?" He brushed a strand of hair from my cheek. He whispered, "I'm not going to let anything or anyone harm you, my princess." He leaped off the cliff with me clinging tightly to him. I kept my face buried against his chest. We hit the ocean, sinking deep beneath its waves. I could feel my lungs burning for air. Prince Caballero somehow still had a tight hold on me. I didn't know how much longer I could hold my breath. He kicked his legs, moving us toward the surface. Our heads popped up above the water. Finally, I could take a shaky breath of air. I wiped the water out of my eyes with one of my hands. Looking up, I couldn't believe that we survived when we shouldn't have. The prince looked at me. He asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded, looking at him questionably. It just wasn't possible for us to still be alive after such a fall. I looked back up the mountainside to where we had stood just seconds ago. I silently prayed for Captain Artthian and his men. They'll be fine. I know Artthian. He'll get himself and his men out somehow. Right now, we have to go. I looked back at him and laughed. "Where should we go, Your Highness? If you haven't noticed, we're in the middle of the ocean, thanks to your brilliant idea," I said, hitting the water with my fist. Instead of answering me, Prince Caballero turned and began to swim further out to sea. You can't be serious. We have to get back on land. Hey, wait. Hello. He was just becoming a huge pain, I thought to myself. Who does he think he is, anyway? I began to swim after him. He was a much faster swimmer than me. Even with my new strength, I was still having trouble keeping up with him. Finally, he came to a stop. He turned around, watching me approach. He smirked, saying, "I'm glad you finally decided to join me." I just glared at him, unable to speak, as I tried to catch my breath. I watched as he pressed several buttons on a watch-like band around his wrist. Then he placed his arm back under the water. He looked at me, saying, "Now we wait." I looked at him in disbelief. I asked, "What? You brought us out into the middle of the ocean to wait? Wait for what?" Prince Caballero looked past me, saying, "For my friend Wheaton to find us. That's why we had to swim further out to sea. He would have never come close to the mountain." We swam in place, not speaking, just waiting for this Wheaton to show up. I just desperately wanted to know what he was planning. How was he going to help me, or was I his prisoner now? I took a deep breath, preparing myself. I wanted to be as civil as I could towards him. He did save my life, I thought, even if we were in the middle of an alien ocean. I tried hard not to think about what creatures swam below us. I asked, "How are we going to get back to Captain Artthians' ship? We have to let them know what has happened. Maybe they can help the captain and us." Prince Caballero said, "We're not, Princess." I waited for him to say more, but he didn't. I wanted to strangle him. I tried to stay calm as I spoke. "Okay, so how do I get back to the ship? Because that's what you mean, right? You have some master plan to get me back to the ship, but you're not coming with me, right?" I grew more annoyed with him as more time seemed to slowly pass before he answered me. He sighed, saying, "We are going to the Artthian city, my home." I started to argue with him, but he continued before I could say anything. "It will be the safest place for you right now. I just have to convince my father to help you. Once he learns Larg has declared himself king, I don't think he will be so opposed to you anymore. Besides, it is time for peace. There has been enough bloodshed." I waited for him to say more, but he didn't. I started to ask him more about his plans, but stopped as I stared at the huge waves moving quickly toward us. Suddenly, the water started churning all around us.
Hang on.
"Our ride's here," the prince said as he grabbed hold of my hand. We were pushed up out of the water. I pulled my hand out of Prince Caballero's as I crawled onto my hands and knees. "We're sitting on Wheaton?" I asked, looking at the large creature. Prince Caballero, now sitting as if he had no care in the world, smiled at the ground. "This is Wheaton, my old friend. He's going to give us a ride back to Kralistan." I watched as two huge, wing-like fins appeared on the sides of the creature. It began to move further out to sea. I looked around, not believing my eyes for the 100th time. Examining the surface we sat on, I realized it was more like a turtle's shell than a rock. The wing-like fins appeared to be similar to that of a stingray. Wishing I could get a better look at the creature, I sat there just glad that it wanted to help us instead of eat us. I looked over at Prince Caballero, who lay there, glistening wet. I wondered how a man I found completely annoying could still be completely breathtakingly handsome. Perhaps it's just this age reversal thing that had me finding him attractive. I shook my head, clearing my thoughts. I wondered how I was ever going to regain the throne from Larg. I hoped I could trust the prince, that he truly wanted to help me. I looked back toward the mountain, expecting to see something of it, but there was no sign of land, just the vast alien ocean. Chapter 8. I wasn't sure how long I had been asleep as I slowly sat up in the large, soft bed. I rubbed my eyes, squinting against the bright sunlight that poured through the dome-shaped window. The window started from the center of the ceiling and continued down, forming one of the walls. Just sitting on the bed, I could see out at the ocean. I could almost imagine that I was at some exotic hotel on Earth, except for the colorful birds and strange dolphin-like creatures that moved outside. It reminded me that I was definitely not on Earth. I sighed and moved off the bed. I walked into the bathroom that had been pointed out to me earlier. After bathing, I put on the clothes that the servant had laid out for me. It was an elegant blue pantsuit. The fabric was very soft to the touch, and when I walked, it almost looked like gentle swirls of water moving around me. I moved toward the wooden doors, reached for the handle, and pushed the door open. I was surprised to find that there were no guards standing outside my door. Outside was a long hallway with pictures of royal Artthians on the walls. I slowly walked down the hallway, looking at the pictures. The Artthians and their city seemed so at odds with what I was told about them. They weren't at all what I pictured a warrior home to be, I thought to myself. A door ahead of me opened, and a young woman stepped into the hallway. As she closed the door, she smiled at me. Walking toward me, she said, "You must be Dorothy." "I'm Narissa." Seeing my puzzled look, she added, "Prince Gaylon is my brother. Come, we shall have a meal and get to know each other better. Oh, and please don't look so grim. I'm sure my brother will convince father to help you. Once Gaylon gets an idea in his head, there is not much anyone can do to sway him." I was completely stunned by her cheerful behavior toward me. Narissa looped her arm through mine, pulling me down the hallway. She led me to a grand living room, but instead of stopping there, we continued out onto the patio. A white table with 4 chairs sat in the middle of the patio. Narissa motioned for me to sit as she took a seat on the opposite side. I slowly sat down at the table. She said, "This is my favorite place to sit. It's always so quiet and peaceful here. Don't you think?" I looked out at the gentle waves of the ocean and smiled. "Yes, it's very pleasant. This is not what I had expected at all. I mean..." Narissa smiled as she interrupted me. "We are not quite the monsters that they believe us to be." I gasped, saying, "Oh no, that's not. Well..." Narissa held up her hand to quiet me. She said, "It's okay. We each have our own misconceptions. You are not what I expected either, but here we are." We sat in silence as the servants brought out the food for us. I didn't know what to say to Narissa. I had not expected any kindness from the Artthians, but here I was, sitting and having lunch with one. I wondered if the Garlandians had misjudged them, and vice versa. I watched the mesmerizing waves of the ocean, thinking that maybe there was some hope. After finishing our meal, Narissa stood up. She smiled at me, saying, "I'll take you to find my brother now. He's most likely still in the study with our father." I followed Narissa to a beautifully carved staircase. We descended into a large open room. There were people walking about, each appearing to be either entering or leaving the castle. I asked her why there weren't any guards around the castle. Narissa explained that the city was well protected, so their men had no need to stand guard. We stopped at a large set of wooden doors. Smiling at me, Narissa said, "Now you mustn't let father intimidate you. It's something he loves to do, but he's really just a bigger Teepus at heart. But don't tell him I said so." With that, she opened the door, walking into a large study. I followed behind her, feeling more like a little fish in a room full of hungry sharks. Taking a deep breath, I waited to be introduced to the king of the Artthians. I hoped I didn't look as nervous as I felt. Narissa walked over to her father, smiling at him. Giving him a kiss on his head, she exclaimed, "Father, I would like you to meet Dorothy. Dorothy, this is my father, King Isseare, and of course, you've already met my brother." Motioning behind me, Gaylon grumbled, "Narissa, you should have waited." Narissa rolled her eyes at Gaylon as she walked back toward me, interrupting him. "Oh, please, you've been trying to convince father all night, when all you need to do is introduce them to each other." Crossing her arm with mine, King Isseare replied, "Daughter, Gaylon is right this." Narissa turned, interrupting him as well. I would have laughed if I wasn't so nervous. She had a way of commanding a room that anyone could find impressive. She said, "Father, you must give her a chance. How many times have I heard you say that if only you had had a chance to at least sit and talk with King Orlean, that things could have been different. Now is your chance, at least here with his granddaughter. For our people, please give this a chance." King Isseare leaned back in his chair, resting his chin on his fist. He looked like Caesar on his throne instead of a man sitting at his office desk. Nerissa gave me a gentle push into the empty chair in front of his desk. I glanced at Gaylon, who sat across from me, looking like a younger version of his father. Nerissa sighed. And please play nice. I have a huge list of things to complete today, so I won't be able to be the peacekeeper. She gave both Gaylon and her father an intense glare, adding, "Behave." With that, Nerissa walked out of the room, shutting the door behind her. Gaylon chuckled. You'll have to excuse her. She tends to be a bit aggressive sometimes. King Isseare replied, Sometimes? Even though he sounded very annoyed, I could see a twinkle in his eyes as he stared at the wooden doors. Sighing, he looked at me. Well, convince me, child. Why should I help you become the leader of the Garlandians? Why should he? I thought to myself, hoping I could find the right words to convince him. Looking down at my lap, I smoothed my pants out, breathing slowly to steady myself. I looked up, saying, I was told that Gaylon had already told you of what has happened. King Isseare nodded. Seeing that this was to be his only response, I continued. I am not sure if I can say anything that will convince you, sir. I'm not even sure if I'm the right person to lead the Garlandians. I have only just learned that I am half Garlandian myself. Perhaps being from Earth can help me have a different outlook on the people of this planet. I know your people and mine have been at war with each other for a very long time. I also know that they wish for peace with your people. They're tired of the fighting and the loss of life. Are your people not the same? How long can each side continue this feud without it destroying both sides? But from what I have seen of this Larg, he is not. He should never rule the Garlandians. He is cruel and heartless. There cannot be any peace with him as their leader. King Isseare and Gaylon exchanged looks, neither speaking. Gaylon said, It will be hard for both sides at first, but I feel it is time for peace, father. For all of us. King Isseare leaned forward in his chair. Sighing, he said, Perhaps the time has come. You, my dear, may prove to be a wise leader for your people. Smiling, he continued, I will have a peace treaty drawn up, and we will review it together. In the meantime, Gaylon, you will need to prepare our warriors for battle. I whispered, Battle? Gaylon placed his hand on my shoulder. Larg is not going to just allow you to walk in and take the throne. Looking up at him, I replied, I know. I just assumed there would be some other way. I don't want more blood on either side, because of me. Gaylon said, There is no other way. The blood will be on Larg's hands, not yours. I nodded, but his words still didn't make me feel any better. King Isseare looked at his son, saying, Perhaps you can give Dorothy a tour of the city, Gaylon. Would you like that, my dear? I smiled at the king, answering him. Yes, I would love to see your city. It is quite amazing. Gaylon held out his hand to me, saying, Shall we go then? Hesitantly, I took his hand and stood up. We started to walk out of the room. I looked at Gaylon, saying, Wait, I have something I wish to ask your father. Walking back toward him, I asked, King Isseare, I have a favor to ask of you. It is not for me, but for my friends, the Garlandians. Is there any way at all that you can help Captain Artthian and his men, as well as his crew on the ship? I fear for them all if Larg finds them. King Isseare said, I will see what I can do. I nodded, saying, Thank you. I turned, leaving with Gaylon. Chapter 9. The next morning, I stood on one of the smaller platforms, stretching and smiling to myself. I had finally beaten Gaylon to the platform today. In the past weeks, he had somehow managed to arrive here before me, always with the same stupid smirk on his face. Now, I thought to myself it was my turn. Hearing footsteps, I glanced back and saw it was Gaylon. I fought back a smile. Facing the ocean, I continued stretching as he walked onto the platform. I said, So glad you finally decided to join me this morning. Turning towards him, I caught a brief smile on his face. He dropped a bag on the ground. It was silly, but I couldn't wait to see him take his shirt off, which he always did now when we trained. Especially since the last time I used it to toss his cute butt out into the ocean. I giggled to myself. clearing my throat when he looked at me. I was still pretty proud of that one. I tried really hard not to stare at his hard stomach as he removed his shirt. Oh my, I thought to myself, shaking my head. I reminded myself to focus. After he removed all the weapons, he said, "Your turn to pick the weapons today." I walked over to the beach, deciding on the 2 daggers. I exclaimed, "I choose these." I turned, arching my eyebrow at him. He smiled at me, nodding, grabbing the other set of twin daggers. He followed me into the middle of the platform. As usual, a crowd slowly formed, both Garlandians and Artthians, each cheering for either Gaylon or me. His younger brothers walked around, making bets on us with the crowd. We started to slowly circle each other. I tested the weight of the weapons. I wasn't worried about hurting him or being injured myself, mainly because all the weapons we used for training were made out of wood, but at a glance, they looked very real. I focused on him, blocking out everyone else. I so wanted to knock him onto his handsome rear again. We moved towards each other, both blocking each other's hits. Gaylon grinned. Better. Then he kicked a knife out of one of my hands, sending it flying through the air. Backing away, he said, "You must remember to keep your arms close to your body. Your knife is your shield, little one." I glared at him as I moved my arms closer to my body. Standing more like a boxer, I slowly moved closer to him. As we fought, I managed to grab one of his wrists with my free hand while blocking his other with my free arm. I brought my knee up into his stomach, hearing him gasp for air. Then I hit the inside of his wrist that I held, knocking the knife from his hand. Smiling, I moved away, saying, "I see what you mean. Do you need a minute?" Gaylon straightened, switching the knife to his right hand. He only replied, "My turn." Crap, I thought to myself. It was never a good sign when he glared at me like he was now. I knew he would never hurt me, but it didn't mean he wouldn't embarrass me. Gaylon moved towards me with the same lethal grace and speed as a panther, sending shivers down my back. I swallowed hard, taking a few steps away from him. I took a deep breath and focused on each hit and kick at him, none of which slowed him down. He managed to kick my legs out from under me. My only knife went sliding across the floor as I hit the deck. I rolled back to my feet, moving toward the knife. I was suddenly brought to a halt by his muscled arm around my neck. Gaylon whispered into my ear, "You forgot rule number 1, princess." I interrupted him, saying, "I know, never take your eyes off your opponent." The Artthian men in the crowd were cheering Gaylon's name as I struggled against him. Although I couldn't see Narissa and Floor, I could hear them cheering for me. Gaylon asked, "Do you give up?" I gasped, "What do you think?" I knew I couldn't pull his arm away, so instead, I grabbed his arm with both hands and bit down hard, making sure not to break the skin. "Dirty trick," he grumbled as he released me. I turned to face him, and somehow, in our struggles, he was now backed up near the end of the dock. I tried using the same kick on him that he had used on me earlier, but I only managed to knock him onto his knees. One more kick, and he would end up in the ocean again. Did I dare? I thought to myself. Smiling, I spun around, kicking my leg out at him. But instead of him flying over the side, he caught my leg in his big hand, grinning up at me. "Really? You thought that would happen again?" "Maybe once, but twice," he laughed as he stood up. He held tight to my leg as I tried to pull away. He turned, asking the crowd, "What do you say, my friends? Should our princess take a little swim? Yes or no?" A loud cheer came from the crowd of men standing around us. I looked back to find even Narissa and Lady Floor cheering. I cried, laughing, "Traitors." I tried to hit Gaylon with my fist, but nothing worked. I said, "You wouldn't do it. You can't. What if I get hurt? Come on, let go." He laughed. "What was it that you said to me?" "Let's see, oh yes, a little water never hurts anyone." With that, he pulled me close, smiling down at me. "Time for a bath, princess." Suddenly, I was up above his head. The roar of the crowd was deafening. I screamed out, and oh, as I felt myself flying through the air. I held my breath as I kicked back up to the surface of the water. I glared up at Gaylon, who stood there with the Garlandians and Artthians, laughing at my misfortune. I tried to fight the smile that crept onto my lips. Then I started laughing too. I swam back towards the dock, taking Galen's outreached hand. He pulled me back up onto the deck. I pushed my finger into his hard chest. Next time it will be you who goes for a swim. He slapped me on the back as I walked away, saying, "We'll see." Nerissa handed me a towel, which I took reluctantly. "Thanks for the support, you two," I said. They looked at each other, then at me. Lady Flor replied, "Sorry, my dear, we kind of got swept up in the moment." Nerissa added, "Sorry," as she tried to keep from laughing. I smiled at them, shaking my head. "It's cool," I said. Later that night, I stood out on the balcony, watching the Nora jet pilots practice their fighting maneuvers. I found them completely amazing. They flew through the air with small jets attached to their backs. The water burst out of the jets, propelling them through the air and the ocean. It was a fascinating dance to watch the warriors perform. They could grab hold of their opponent from midair and then drag them down to the bottom of the ocean. I was so captivated by the show that I hadn't noticed Gaylon standing beside me until he spoke. "Are you enjoying the show?" I replied, "Yes, they're amazing. They look like flying sea snakes if a snake could fly." Gaylon agreed, "Yes, and they can be just as deadly." It was a sobering thought. I looked down at the water, saying, "Are we really going to war?" "There isn't any other way to remove Larg from the throne." Gaylon replied, "He will not give it up willingly, Dorothy." Leaning forward onto the railing, he continued, "From what our spies have gathered, he has imprisoned the elders' families to gain control over them. Larg controls the elders." I interrupted him, saying, "He controls the army." Gaylon continued, "We will have to take the throne from him. It is the only way now." I nodded, asking, When will we attack?" He looked down at me.
Soon.
"Once Captain Artthian and his men arrive, we will go to war." I stood up, gasping. "They're alive." "How do you know? When will they get here?" Gaylon smiled at me, saying, "I didn't want to worry you until I knew we had them out of the city safely. I have been communicating with him through one of our spies for a few days. He has friends inside the city that hide him and his men." I asked, "If there's a way to get them out, then why can't we do the same to get to Larg and prevent this war?" Gaylon sighed. "He's too heavily protected. Besides, he could order the death of the elders' families before we could ever reach him in time." I nodded. "Does Lady Flor know about Captain Artthian?" He grinned, responding, "Yes, she's preparing a grand feast for their arrival. Will you save me a dance?" I could feel my cheeks turning red. I stammered, "Oh, there's going to be dancing? Well, I don't know how to dance. I'm sorry, I never learned." He smiled at me, saying, "The steps are not that difficult to learn. Here, I'll show you." Before I could argue, I found myself in his arms. He placed my hand on his shoulder while holding my other hand in his own. Being in his arms made my heart skip a beat. The smell of him was intoxicating. A part of me never wanted him to let me go. I prayed he couldn't see how he made me feel as we slowly danced. He spoke softly, "See, it's not difficult at all, my princess." I couldn't take my eyes off his lips as I said, "You're right, it's easy." Our eyes met, and I knew he was going to kiss me. I whispered, "We shouldn't do this." He whispered, "Do what?" His mouth was only inches from mine. Before I could respond, his lips were covering mine. He kissed me so slowly, so gently, that I forgot to breathe. As time seemed to stand still, all I knew was this very moment. His lips felt so sweet on mine. I never wanted him to stop. Someone cleared their throat from behind us. He hurriedly said, "My apologies, Your Highness, for interrupting." Gaylon slowly lifted his lips from mine, but did not release me from his embrace, only inches away, staring into my eyes. The guard cleared his throat again. "Sir, your father requested your presence in his study." Not taking his eyes from mine, Gaylon replied, "Thank you. Tell him I'll be right there shortly." The sound of footsteps echoed on the floor, letting us know he had left. Gaylon said, "Well, it seems I have to go." He brushed his thumb slowly over my bottom lip, smiling as he added, "I'll be looking forward to our next dance." He then bowed to me before turning to walk away. I watched him leave, standing there in shock. I touched my fingers to my bottom lip as I whispered aloud, "Oh my." Chapter 10. Captain Artthian and his men arrived 2 days later. The whole city was busy with preparations for tonight's party. Lady Fleur had everyone, both Garlandians and Artthians, busy at work. Nerissa was helping me practice the steps to the dance Gaylon had shown me. I kept the fact that we had kissed to myself. After practicing, she asked me, "So, have you picked out what you're going to wear tonight?" Sitting down in a chair, I smiled. "I haven't really thought about it." She laughed. "Really? And how many times have you looked through that?" I paused, my fingers resting on the wardrobe pad I held in my hands. I rolled my eyes at her, tossing the device onto the coffee table. I calmly replied, I don't know what you're talking about." I glanced up at Nerissa, who was sitting on the edge of her dad's desk, grinning back at me. I shook my head. "Okay, so maybe I'm a bit nervous, so sue me." She replied, "What would you have to be nervous about? Are you scared he'll kiss you again?" I gasped, looking up at her. "How long have you known?" "I didn't tell anyone." "Has he?" Nerissa giggled. "Gaylon has been just as quiet as you about it." But the soldier interrupted you too well. Someone told his wife, who told her sister, who told her cousin. Giggling, she continued, "And well, you know how that goes." I cried. "You're joking, right?" Nerissa shook her head, still giggling. I asked, "How many people know, Nerissa?" She cleared her throat and said, "I don't think the citizens in the bottom city know yet." I glared at her, replying, "That is a joke, right?" Nerissa grimaced, saying, "Sorry, but no, I'm not joking. Look on the bright side. A lot of people are betting on the two of you." I replied, "That's not funny, Nerissa." She stood up, walking over to the chair next to mine and sitting down. She said, "Well, I'm not joking about that either. Philip and Tommy are kind of running some bets on you too," fighting a smile while biting her bottom lip as she spoke about her younger brothers. I jumped up, feeling more embarrassed and angry. I started pacing back and forth, saying, "What? They're not doing that. When I get my hands on the two of them, I'll—" Nerissa laughed, saying, "You're overreacting. Calm down. Everything will be fine." Gaylon said he was going to speak to them. I turned, looking at her. This is so embarrassing. What must everyone think? How can I show my face tonight? Nerissa sighed. "It was only a kiss, so stop worrying about it." "It was only a kiss, right?" I gasped. "Yes, it was only a kiss, but we are about to go to war, and we've just signed the treaty." Then I go and let him kiss me. "We barely know each other." I continued pacing, saying, "It's just that the timing is all wrong. I should have kept everything businesslike." Nerissa grabbed me by the arm, laughing as she exclaimed, "Stop it. You've done nothing wrong, so suck it up and let's go pick out a knockout dress for you to wear." With that, she dragged me back to my room. We spent the rest of the day getting ready for the party. I walked with Nerissa to the grand ballroom where the party was being held. I truly felt like a princess in the beautiful blue and white dress I wore. It had a scallop neckline, and from the waist down, soft organza-like ruffles trailed down the front. My hair was pulled back into a jewel band, leaving the back to fall in soft curls. I slowly entered through the doors to the ballroom. The circular ballroom was huge, with a ceiling made of glass. The stars and 2 moons that could be seen made the night seem magical. Half of the room had elegant tables set up, while the other half was left for the dance floor. I tried not to search the room for Gaylon, wondering where he could be. I hadn't seen him since the night we kissed. I hoped he was not avoiding me. Nerissa assured me it was due to all the preparations for the battle. That was why I hadn't seen him. Spotting Captain Artthian and Lady Fleur, we walked over to where they were sitting. Captain Artthian stood, bowing to me as he said, "I had feared the worst, my lady. I am pleased to find my worries were unnecessary. Your grandfather would have been very proud of you. You have accomplished what he had always desired, a peace between our people. I smiled weakly at him. Thank you, Captain Artthian. But I am not the leader of the Garlandians yet. I am hesitant to celebrate until Larg has been dealt with and the rest of the Garlandians are free from his rule. Captain Artthian motioned for us to sit down at the table with them. He surprised me with a smile, which I hadn't seen him do until now. He said, "Your fears are well placed, my lady. We will win the battle that is to come, that I am sure of." I nodded, saying, "I just wish there was some other way than war. I don't wish for anyone to be harmed." Captain Artthian leaned back in his chair, staring at me. He replied, "War is never pretty, Princess Isseare. Death is always a part of it. But Gaylon has informed me that the Artthian scientists are coming up with something to lessen the losses." Lady Fleur and Narissa looked just as surprised as I felt. My fears lessened a little, feeling that there was some hope. I looked at him, waiting for him to continue, but he said, "I don't wish to go into details at this moment." He held up his hand to silence any questions we had, then continued, "They're still working on the device. I do not wish to get anyone's hopes up." With that, he motioned for the servants to bring us some drinks while we waited for the food to be served. The food that was served was as beautiful as it was delicious. There were different types of seafood, as well as fowl that oddly tasted like chicken. They served a variety of fruits and vegetables that were unlike anything on earth. Narissa whispered, "Be careful with the honey fruit. It can be a bit intoxicating unless you've built up a tolerance to it." Thanking her, I made a note to myself to avoid it altogether. I sat, listening to the music being played. It was unlike anything I had ever heard before now. The melody was very enchanting as it filled the ballroom. I was so lost in the music that I hadn't heard Gaylon even approach us. "Good evening, ladies," Gaylon said as he arrived at our table. He stood with his arms behind his back, staring at Captain Artthian. Nodding at the captain, he said, "Artthian." It was a bit surprising to see them not at each other's throats. Gaylon looked down at me, saying, "Shall we?" Holding his hand out to me. I could feel everyone at the table turn to look at me. Narissa exclaimed, "Wait, that's never mind." I took a quick sip of the fruity, honey-like juice that had been poured for me. Inhaling a deep breath, I took his hand and followed him out onto the dance floor. I followed his lead as he took me into his embrace. I could feel everyone's eyes on us as we danced. Feeling my cheeks burning, I kept my eyes focused on the top buttons of his white shirt. "You look stunning tonight, my princess," he said, his breath fanning my hair. Smiling, I looked up at him and replied, "Thank you. You're not too bad yourself either." Clearing my throat, I quickly added, "I mean, you look very handsome too." Gaylon chuckled. "Thank you." I looked at our hands intertwined, wishing this moment could last forever. I felt him watching me intently. Feeling a little vulnerable, I tried to think of something to talk about. I said, "You and Captain Artthian seem to have worked out your differences." Gaylon smiled. "You mean I'm not trying to take his head off anymore?" My eyes widened. "No, that's not." Gaylon interrupted me, saying, "I know. We have a treaty now between our people. If I were to kill Artthian, one of the Garlandian commanders, how do you think they would react?" He continued answering his own question. "It would mean the end of any peace for both of our people. That would not allow." I smiled softly up at him. We danced in silence for some time. I sighed, saying, "I wish this night would never end. Everyone seems so happy now. Safe. 2 more days is all we have, right? Until we are at war with my own people. What good is a peace treaty if there is still no peace, Gaylon?" Gaylon leaned down, gently kissing my forehead, saying, "There will be peace. I promise you that. We are going to win, Dorothy. We have to." Feeling warm all over, I giggled, smiling up at him. I whispered, "You're my prince in shining armor, aren't you?" Wrapping my arms around his neck, I pulled him closer to me. I could tell he was a little shaken by my sudden change of mood, but I didn't care because I felt lighter than air. I smiled up at him, saying, "When you were researching Earth's history, did you happen to study Earth dances?" I continued, not letting him speak. "We dance much closer like this. I moved, dancing around him, wrapping my arms back around his neck as I came back to face him. I kissed him gently, biting his lower lip. I then asked, "Did you see the movie Dirty Dancing?" I winked at him. His eyes grew huge. Clearing his throat, Gaylon exclaimed, "Dorothy, I don't think that would be." He pulled my arms from around his neck, stopping me from kissing his lips again. Pouting, I cried, "But they're just begging to be kissed. Don't you want to kiss me too?" He cleared his throat again, shaking his head more to himself than to me as he turned. Chapter 11. I stumble slightly as he pulls me along with him. He gently places his arm around me, keeping me upright. He whispers, "You don't know how much, but not like this, love." By the time we walk back to Captain Artthians' table, I feel numb all over. Gaylon gently guides me into my chair as the room begins to spin. Something is wrong with her. What has she had to eat and drink? Gaylon asks. Nerissa replies, "Calm down. You're going to blow a vein or something." He glares at her. "Nerissa, if you're the cause." She glares back. "I didn't do anything. She just had a sip of the honey juice, that's all." Galen's voice turns to a low growl. "Why didn't you stop her? We don't know what kind of effect it could have on her." Lady Fleur tries to fight back a smile. "We do now." I slowly lift my head off my arm, saying, "I'm right here, you know." "Oh, I feel perfectly fine. Just a little loopy, but fine." I lay my head back down, feeling the room spin out of control. Nerissa leans toward me, rubbing my back. "She's going to be fine. It was just one little sip." Gaylon kneels beside me. "She better be." I smile at him, running a finger down his nose and tapping the tip of it. "Oh, you're worried about me. That is so sweet. Isn't he just the cutest?" I blow a kiss at him. The women at the table start giggling at Galen's discomfort. He stands up, saying, "We should get you to bed. Artthian, could you notify the doctor to come to Dorothy's room for me?" I giggle, looking toward Lady Fleur and Nerissa. He said bed. Lady Fleur covers her mouth with her hand while Nerissa replies, "Yes, he did." Gaylon clears his throat loudly. Captain Artthian nods, his eyes twinkling. "Of course." I stand up quickly, slurring my words as I look around. "I'm fine." I turn to walk out onto the dance floor but suddenly find myself falling. I brace myself for the hard floor that never comes. Instead, I find myself in Galen's embrace. I look up into his eyes. "You're truly my prince in shining armor." I lay in my bed, Gaylon and Zon fussing over me. Gaylon wouldn't let Zon leave until he was sure the juice I had drunk wasn't poisonous. Zon, checking his test results for the third time, said, "I assure you, Prince Gaylon, she will recover. She is only intoxicated, the poor thing." He patted my head as if I were a small child. "I will check on you in the morning, my dear. Good night." He bowed to us and quickly turned, leaving us alone in the room. I smiled up at Gaylon as he pulled the blanket over me. I patted the space beside me. "Sit with me, please." I smiled at him, whispering as he sat down, "Tonight was wonderful." He smiled back at me, shaking his head. "I hope you will still feel that way in the morning." I sat up quickly, swaying slightly. "I will. You'll see. Tonight was perfect. You were perfect." I stared into his eyes dreamily. Leaning toward him, I puckered my lips, waiting. When he didn't kiss me, I asked, "Well, I'm waiting." I felt the bed move, and I opened my eyes to see Gaylon rubbing his forehead. "What's wrong? Don't you want to kiss me?" I asked. When he didn't answer, I felt my heart sink. Oh no. I got it all wrong. Have I been acting like a silly schoolgirl and scared you off? I'm sorry. Suddenly, Gaylon was beside me. "You haven't done anything wrong. Don't cry, love." He gently wiped away the tears I didn't know I was shedding, lifting my chin so I would look him in the eyes. I do have feelings for you. Very strong feelings for you, Dorothy, but you're not thinking straight right now. Look at you, you are in your nightgown with me in your bed." I smiled up at him. My thoughts only centered on the fact that he cared for me. I sighed. "You do care for me, then kiss me." I pulled my legs up under me, wrapping my arms around his neck as I kissed him gently and deeply on the lips. Gaylon placed his hands on my upper arms, slowly, reluctantly pulling me slightly away from him. "Dorothy, stop," I whispered, brushing my lips against his. "Why?" Gaylon sighed. "This is not how I want this to happen. You don't feel the same way right now, but you will in the morning. You'll understand then," he continued, not letting me speak. "Artthian ways are what humans call old-fashioned, we marry first. Well, before that." I blushed. "But I only wanted to kiss you, Gaylon. I wasn't trying to force you to sleep with me." I started to lean toward him again. He squeezed my arms slightly. I don't think I could stop with just one kiss. I felt myself melting into him as I touched his cheek, sighing. "Oh, I'll stop you, so you don't have to be afraid. Kiss me goodnight." He started to say something, but instead, he shook his head, smiling. He sighed, lowering his lips onto mine, kissing me gently at first, with a low growl, then deepened the kiss. He pulled me tightly against his chest, wrapping his arms around me. My hands moved up his arms and into his hair as we lost ourselves in the moment. I pulled gently on his hair as one of his hands moved up my stomach slowly toward my chest. "I gave you my word," I said against his lips, stopping his hand. I whispered, "I'll see you in the morning. Hopefully you won't be too embarrassed." He smiled at me as I whispered, "Never." I smiled, watching him try not to look me over. He rubbed a hand through his hair, shaking his head, clearing his throat. He smiled, saying, "Good night, my princess." He bowed toward me and quickly left the room. I fell back against my pillow, giggling, biting my lower lip. I pulled the blankets over my head and fell fast asleep. I was completely mortified as I sat on the balcony with Narissa and Lady Flor. It had taken them all morning just to talk me out of bed. The worst part was that I could remember every little detail, like an artist had painted the whole night's events in my head, with subtitles. I sat at the table with my hands covering my face. I exclaimed through my hands, "I feel like I had a whole bottle of tequila, but why couldn't I have forgotten everything too? Every little detail." Narissa replied cheerfully, "That's the best thing about the honey juice. It leaves your mind completely clear and focused the next day. The headache is the downside." I groaned. "Tell me about it." Lady Flor whispered, "Oh, you poor thing. Here, drink this. It's my own herbal remedy. It will work wonders, you'll see." I grimaced as I sipped it. She added, "Sorry, it's not very pleasant tasting." Narissa said, "I'm surprised you had such a strong reaction to it. I mean, you only had one sip. Your human side must have a very low tolerance level." I peeked at her through my fingers and growled, "Really, you think?" Narissa sighed, stirring her tea. She replied, "You don't have to be snappy. I did try to stop you." I rolled my eyes, regretting the movement when I was rewarded with a stab of pain. Narissa smiled as she said, "Oh no, I hate to tell you this, but Gaylon is headed this way." I gasped. "No, I can't see him right now. I'm not ready to see him. Tell him to go away, please." Lady Flor replied, "Too late, dear. I saw her waving at someone behind me. Gaylon, how wonderful to see you. Please join us." With my hands on either side of my face, I glared at her. I could hear his footsteps coming closer, and I didn't look up as I listened to the chair beside me being pulled out. He asked, "How are you feeling?" I knew the question was directed at me without looking at him. "Awful," I replied, picking at him through my fingers. He sat there, staring at me, one of his hands covering the smile he was trying hard to hide as he leaned on the table. I grumbled, "You can go now." It was killing me to sit at the same table with him. Knowing how I had behaved last night, in my nightgown, I thought to myself. Lady Flor gasped, "Dorothy, that is no way to speak to the prince. You have to forgive her, Your Highness. She is really not herself today." Gaylon replied, "It's fine. I've had to live through the aftermath of that very same fruit myself." He pushed his chair back, adding, "I have to get back to work anyway." I knew I hadn't offended him because I could hear the humor in his voice. He stepped over beside me, bending down to kiss the top of my head. He said, "You'll feel better in a few days." I gasped.
What?
A few days? I thought, staring at him. He started chuckling as I buried my face back into my arms on the table. He moved his hand gently over my hair, saying, "Goodbye." I listened to his footsteps as he walked away. Chapter 12. The time seemed to pass slowly until I stood on the deck, looking out at the Garlandian army. Gaylon stood by my side, ready for battle. The 4 warships and the Artthians were in perfect formation, waiting for Gaylon's orders. The Garlandians had their own ships ready for battle, facing us. Although they didn't seem as advanced as the Artthian ships, I didn't want to underestimate them. Larg's army was positioned along the base of the cliff. In the skies, soldiers with weapons in hand rode the winger tipis. I tried to locate Larg but couldn't find him. I asked, "Do you see Larg?" thinking to myself that the quicker he was taken out, the faster this battle would end. Gaylon looked down at me, saying, "Larg will wait until he thinks it's safe for him to appear. Most likely when he thinks that he is winning, and we have lost all hope. That's when he will show himself, Dorothy." He continued, "Don't worry. I have my people still inside the city walls working to end this war sooner." I asked, "But how the elders? If we free them, then I can tap my ruby slippers and go home." "I know, lame joke, right?" He smiled at me, shaking his head. "Smart girl." "Yes, if we can free them from his control, then they can tell the Garlandians to stop, and I'll put an end to Larg." A shiver ran down my spine at his final words. I quickly replied, "We can't kill him, Gaylon. It would just put blood on our hands." Gaylon moved my hair back from my face, saying, "You're too kind and forgiving, my love. He would never show you the same mercy." I replied, "That's why we can't kill him. We would be no better than him if we did." The Garlandian trumpets filled the air. Gaylon smirked. I knew Larg would grow impatient and attack first if we waited. Now, they will learn what it's like to fight us on our terms. Gaylon spoke into a small device, telling his men to hold their ground. He ordered the Nero jet pilots to prepare for deployment. Captain Artthian came to stand at my right side. Gaylon asked, "Any word yet?" Artthian answered, "They are nearing where the elders and their families are being held. They should have them within the hour." Larg was never very smart. I would have never left the city so defenseless within. Gaylon agreed, smiling. That will be his undoing. A shiver ran down my spine as I watched the Garlandian fleet quickly approach us. The roars of the Artthians filled the air as each ship came face to face with each other. The Garlandian ships started firing their cannons. I had to hold onto the railing as the first hit shook the ship. I looked out at sea, watching the Nero pilots attacking the warriors on top of the Artthians. I gasped as one Arthian struck out at a nearby pilot. He quickly flew out of the way, turning and firing his force field gun at the Garlandian, causing him to fall into the sea. Another Nero pilot fell into the water, having been stabbed by a Garlandian. "Missile, Captain." Approaching on our right, a soldier cried from the far side of the ship. Gaylon wrapped his arms around me, grabbing hold of the railing. Captain Artthian shouted, "Prepare for impact." The blast rocked the ship, followed by an eerie silence. Gaylon asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded, looking up at him. He slowly let me go, turning around to his men. He yelled, "What are the damages?" Before anyone could answer, the ship shook again. A loud noise filled the air as our ship was pulled quickly toward the Garlandian warship. Captain Artthian shouted to Gaylon, "They have harpooned the ship with a cable. It can't be cut." Before Gaylon could give any orders, the ship was suddenly pulled tightly alongside the Garlandian ship. As the Garlandians boarded our ship, Gaylon ordered, "Get Dorothy below now. Guard the doors." I was quickly taken down to the second helm room before I could even argue. I could hear the click of the lock as the guards at the door shut it. I leaned against the center table, wishing I had paid more attention to how the computers worked. I could turn on the screen if I knew how, but there hadn't been enough time to learn about the ship's computers. The minutes seemed to tick slowly by as I waited. Then the shouts came from outside my door. I could hear the guards fighting. I quickly moved around the table, wanting to put as much distance between me and the door as possible. I knew if I were to fight them, I had to move faster than they did and stay out of their reach. If they got a grip on me, I would have no chance. Knowing speed was my ally, not strength, I knelt behind the table, pulling out my gun. I knew the force field gun wouldn't hold anyone for long on land, but I hoped it would slow them down at least enough so I could take them out, or at least escape this room. I looked around the corner of the table as the door slid open. 2 Garlandian warriors were walking into the room, while another waited outside. I fired the gun at the closest man. The field enveloped him, flickered, and then vanished, releasing him just as soon. Well, that was shorter than I thought, I grumbled under my breath, tossing the gun at his head. Hitting him harder than I expected, he wobbled on his feet and slid to the floor, falling onto his face. I gasped. I can't believe that worked. I actually hit him, and that looked like it really hurt. I stood up, looking at the other Garlandian. He slowly walked toward me with a large knife in his hand, grimacing. I'm sorry. I have my orders. I will try to make this as quick and painless as possible, my lady. He moved around the table, reaching for me. Thanks, but no thanks, I said as I ran to the other side. I started to pull out my dagger, but stopped when I noticed a cup of hot liquid on the desk behind me. Grabbing it, I tossed the contents at the man across the table. He wiped his face, swearing. I jumped on the table, running toward him, kicking the knife from his hand. He turned just as fast and knocked my legs out from under me. I fell hard on the table but managed to kick him in the face. I quickly rolled off the table, moving toward him. I punched him in the stomach, causing him to bend forward. I then grabbed him by the hair and slammed his face into the table, knocking him unconscious. The third guard moved into the room as I gently let the one in my hands crumble to the floor. I reluctantly pulled my knife out. Before we could attack each other, an Artthian voice came onto the radio. We freed the elders. I repeat, the elders are free. Does anyone hear me? We stood there facing each other as the Artthian frantically repeated his message, then stopped. Silence filled the room. The Garlandian stood with his knife in hand, glaring at me. I could see the indecision in his eyes. I said, I am the rightful ruler of your people, as I lowered my knife. Not Larg. You heard it yourself, that the elders are free. Now, who do you think they would wish as the new ruler of the Garlandians? Me or Larg? He slowly lowered his knife. Forgive me, he said, kneeling in front of me. My lady, my life is yours. Raising his knife in his hand to me, I looked down at him, saying, there's no need for that. You had no other choice. You had to follow his orders to keep your people safe. Please, put that away and stand. He slowly put away his knife and started checking on the other man, looking at me from where he knelt. It seems you're a fine warrior. I am glad I did not have to harm you. I smiled back at him. Same here. I moved toward the panel, speaking into the radio. I said, this is Dorothy, Princess Dorothy. Are the elders in position on the mountain? I anxiously waited for a response. The man responded, we will be there in 5. I turned, thinking that now I just had to get everyone's attention. I looked at the 3 men in front of me, asking the 2 that were awake now, are you able to walk? They both nodded. Then it's time for us to put on a little show for everyone. I continued, explaining my plan to them. I stood in the middle of 2 of the warriors, while the third one walked in front of us. They each held a weapon in their hands. We came to a stop in the middle of the deck. The Garlandian yelled towards Gaylon, tell your men to put down their weapons now, your highness. Gaylon raised an eyebrow. Why should I? The Garlandian moved, revealing me to him. Gaylon growled, tossing the man he was fighting over the railing, then started toward us. Gaylon, don't. Ruby slippers, remember? I said, hoping he'd read between the lines. He slowly stopped, eyeing me, then nodded, saying, put your weapons down. All the Artthians reluctantly lowered their weapons as the Garlandian soldiers pushed them into one group. Everything came to a standstill as a Garlandian gave the orders to take Gaylon and his men onto their ship. He looked at Gaylon, saying, "Order your flight to return home." I gave him a slight nod. The Garlandian ships returned to the mountainside as the Artthian fleet left. Larg finally rode out toward us from the mountain on a large Artthipas. The Arthipa's wings flapped in the air as he shouted, "Why is she still alive?" The Garlandian bowed, saying, "I thought you might want to see her die with your own eyes, sire." Larg smiled, nodding his head. "Finish her." The man turned to me as he approached with a knife in hand. He whispered, "Where are they?" I whispered back, "I don't know," as I glanced at the mountain. "We just have to buy them some time." The elder should have been there by now. He shoved me down onto my knees. The warriors started to argue about what weapon to use, trying to kill time, and not me. "You have to move her hair out of the way," one of them exclaimed, fussing with my hair. Another replied, "We need a sword, not the knife." Larg suddenly grumbled, "For all that is holy, just do it already." All three of them answered, "Yes, your highness." I kept my head bowed, biting my lower lip to keep from grinning. One of the warriors yelled, "Does anyone have a sword?" Someone approached us, and I could hear something metal being passed around. Another one complained, "This won't do. It's not sharp enough." Larg interrupted their argument, exclaiming, "If I have to come down there, more than one head will be rolling today." But the men didn't get a chance to respond to Larg. I looked up at what had caused everyone to go silent. On the cliff above us stood the Garlandian elders. The oldest of the group moved forward, saying, "Garlandians, stand down and release Princess Naishi at once, as well as the Artthians." Larg quickly spun his mount around to face the elder, saying, "What is this? You have no right. Or have you forgotten what I promised?" The elder stood her ground calmly, saying, "Your words have no more weight, child. Our new Artthian friends have freed our families and us from your evil rule. Seize him now." Larg's eerie laugh filled the air as he yelled back at them, "This is not over." With that, he raced toward the forest. I gasped, realizing that the Arthipas he rode wasn't as tired as the others, which gave him more speed. I cried, "He's going to get away." Gaylon wrapped his arms around me, saying, "It's okay. He won't get far." I watched as Larg disappeared into the forest with the Garlandian and Artthian soldiers following behind him, hoping they would catch him. Several weeks later, I stood in the study of the Garlandian castle, waiting for Nerissa to arrive. "My study," I thought to myself as I walked over to the window looking out at it. A gust of wind carried the smell of honeysuckle-like flowers from the gardens below. I sighed. Everything had turned out better than I had expected. Although many had been badly wounded, no one had died during the battle. I jumped at the knock at the door. I exclaimed, "Come in," turning to face Captain Artthian as he entered the room. He bowed to me, saying, "Good morning, my lady." I smiled, replying, "I wish people would stop doing that." Artthian cheerfully replied, "What?" saying good morning. He teased me with a smile. I glared at him and smiled back. "You know what I mean, all this bowing and my lady, maybe I should make it a rule or something." Artthian smiled. "Well, you could if that is what you wish, my lady." I looked up at him as I sat down in a chair. "Could I?" He walked over to another chair and sat down. "You're queen now. You can make or change whatever rules you wish." "Well, with the elder's approval, of course." I groaned. Of course. I remembered bumping heads on the exact topic with Elder Sophia earlier. She was completely against the idea. Captain Artthian chuckled, seeming to know where my thoughts were at that moment. I cleared my head and asked, "Is there any word yet about Larg?" He shook his head. "That worm has still managed to evade capture, but he'll be found. With both my and Galen's men searching for him. Well, it's just a matter of time." I picked at the arm of the chair, nodding. Gaylon, I thought to myself. In the past 3 weeks, I had not seen or heard from him. Not a single word from him. I asked, "How is Gaylon and his people?" Captain Artthian smiled. "They are all well. Gaylon sends his regards as well." I replied, "Good," hoping I would be able to see him soon. Artthian continued, "My wife wishes to know if you would like to dine with us tonight." I nodded. "Of course, I would love to." He stood, bowing. "Then, we shall see you tonight, my lady." That night, Sarah and Zara helped me prepare for dinner. They seemed especially cheerful tonight, moving quickly around the room, laughing and joking. I tried to appear happy as well, instead of feeling miserable because of missing Gaylon. I didn't even put up a fight over what dress they picked out for me to wear for the night. After helping me dress, I slowly walked out to the dining room. The castle was so quiet, too quiet, I thought. Usually, the servants were making some noise or another. I would have been afraid if it wasn't for the two guards that followed closely behind me. I stopped at the door to the dining room, waving my hand over the panel. I hesitated for a moment, seeing the dining room was almost pitch black, except for a few floating globes of light hovering over the table. I stepped inside, the doors closing behind me. My guards remained outside. All the lights came on as I started toward the table. Gaylon stood in the center of the room. Behind him were all the people I had grown to know and love since arriving on Isseare. They all happily cheered, surprising me. Gaylon smiled at me, pointing up. I looked up as a white yard of cloth fell from and hung between the two orbs of light. Embroidered onto it were the words, "Will you marry me?" I looked from it to him in shock as he smiled at me. "I did some more research on your Earth customs," he said. I just stared at him, unable to speak. He cleared his throat slowly, coming toward me. I asked, You do know what that means, right?" He grinned. "I wouldn't be asking if I didn't. You still haven't given me an answer, my princess." I whispered, looking up at him as he took my hands into his. "Yes." He leaned closer to me, teasingly replying, "What was that?" I giggled, exclaiming, "Yes." His hands cupped my face as he leaned in closer to kiss me. One more time. He kissed me as I whispered against his lips, "Yes, I will marry you." He laughed, pulling me up into his arms as he spun us around in a circle. I was worried there for a moment. "I was afraid you would say no," I replied, holding on to him. "Never." I asked, "What would you have done if I had?" He smiled back at me, saying, "I would have kidnapped you, of course, dragging you back to my home, kicking and screaming." I laughed. "No, you wouldn't." Tossing me up into his arms, he brushed his nose against mine, replying teasingly, "That has been my people's way for generations. We take what we want." I smiled at him, staring up into his deep blue eyes as I said, "Well, Artthian, are you going to take a kiss from me or not?" He chuckled as he lowered his lips to mine, kissing me gently.